This happened about 40 years ago. I was 20 at the time. The first time I met the guy who would become my grocery store stalker, he was standing outside the store, collecting money for the Salvation Army Christmas time donations. I'm a fairly friendly person, so I like to say hi to people who work at places I frequent, just to be nice. This guy was a kid around my age, very tall with a mild resemblance to Lurch from the Addams Family. Big dark circles under the eyes, short black hair, and a kind of vacant look in his eyes. I chatted with him for maybe all of 2 minutes. Just idle chit-chat about the weather and whatnot, nothing particularly memorable or interesting, and then waved goodbye and went home. Little did I know, that single moment would be the start of something that would have me genuinely afraid. About 4 or 5 months passed by, and I hadn't seen him again in that whole while. Then one day, as I was grocery shopping with a friend, while we were chatting, she suddenly got very quiet and kind of recoiled backwards, looking behind me. I turned around to see this guy, who had to be at least 6'4", towering over me not 8 inches from my body. He said hi, and told me he remembered me from that December when I had talked to him before. Then he asked for my number. I, being young and never having experienced this type of interaction before, told him I didn't have my number memorized, but I would write his down and text him later. I kind of half-waved my phone at him, pointing out my at-the-time boyfriend, whose picture was my wallpaper, making a point to even say it. "Oh look, that's my boyfriend." I hoped this would clue the guy in, but no such luck. He told me his number, which immediately upon getting I blocked, without letting him get my phone number. However, what really made my blood run cold was what he said after I put my phone away. He leaned in real close, and in a low voice he whispered, "Whatever I text you is for your eyes only." At this point, I started to feel genuinely uncomfortable. "Yeah, sure. Whatever. Nice talking to you, but we gotta get back to shopping now?" I grabbed my friend and dragged her off, shooting a panicked look at her and asking why she didn't bail me out. Apparently he'd scared her too, with his getting so close to me, and she just didn't know what to do. I want to make it clear, I'm not exactly a small girl. I'm 5'8" and solidly built. I can certainly handle myself, and I very rarely feel intimidated or small in the presence of anyone, male or female. But this guy was so big he made me feel tiny and scared. In the months that would follow, he would make me feel truly frightened. I of course hoped that this creepy interaction would be the very last time I saw him, but that was unfortunately not the case. After that initial meeting with him saying that creepy thing about his text being for my eyes only, it seemed like I ran into him every single time I would go to the store. No matter what checkout lane I was in, he always seemed to appear right at the end of it when I was finished shopping, and every time I was in the store, I would always notice him out of the corner of my eye, watching me, no matter what area I happened to be in. One time I even caught him following me out to my car. At that point I got scared, and decided to say something to the managers. After letting the managers know what was going on, they assured me they would tell him not to talk to me. After that, he would never speak to me, but I would constantly see him following me around the store at a distance every time I would go there. It got so bad, and I felt so frightened that I started to be afraid to go to the store at all. I'm one of those stubborn people, though, who refuses to be intimidated by someone to the point where I'll stop doing something. I had hoped that maybe it was just a coincidence that he was following me. After all, it was a really big store, and maybe he just had things to do that just happened to be in the same areas I was shopping in, so I started to pay closer attention to my surroundings. Once I really started paying attention, though, I realized that every single time I was there, I would constantly see him following me around the areas of the store I was in. During my last encounter with him, I went up to the store to grab just 2 or 3 items I needed for dinner that night, and I saw him standing outside when I got there. He had his back to me, so I quickly ran inside hoping he wouldn't see me. Unfortunately though, a few minutes later, I saw him at the very back of the store, and items in hand. I immediately made a beeline towards the front. As soon as I got near the checkout, I ducked behind one of the shelf displays and watched carefully at the front of the store to see if he would appear, and he did. I watched as he scanned up and down the checkout, and when he didn't see me there, I saw him walk outside. At this point, I quickly ran to the nearest open cashier, rang up my items, and stuck my head out the door to look for him. I didn't see him there immediately, so I started trying to make my way back to where I was parked. I had parked a ways away, near the side of the store where a bunch of other small stores and restaurants were lined up, but as I was making my way towards my car, I realized I saw him standing and waiting by the entrance I had first used to enter the store through. I ducked behind a pillar immediately, hoping he didn't see me. I watched very carefully from behind the pillar as he constantly scanned the parking lot. Obviously, he couldn't find me. After a minute or two, he started to walk towards the direction of the parking lot in front of the store, and so I took that opportunity to make a run for it to my car as soon as he was far enough away that I felt safe. As soon as I got into my car, I locked the doors, and to my horror when I looked up, he was standing there, only 15 feet away, with a shopping cart right in front of him. I knew he followed me. He knew I knew as well. I fully believe he chased after me, and when I made it to my car, he grabbed the nearest cart to make it look like he was only collecting them from the parking lot. I just remember feeling absolutely terrified in that moment. I went home and immediately told my grandfather what happened. I began crying and shaking, and my grandfather told me to get in the car. We were going to settle this once and for all. He and I drove up to the store in his car, and he walked me in and demanded we speak with the managers immediately, both of them. When the managers arrived at customer service, he asked me to tell them what had been happening and demanded that they ensure he left me alone or he would involve the police. The managers swore up and down they would take care of it. As far as I know, he wasn't fired immediately, because my friend who first encountered him with me when this whole thing began told me she would see him from time to time when she was there by herself, but that any time I went with her, she would never see him. I fully believe he knew whenever I was there, only this time, instead of stalking me, he avoided me. Eventually, everyone who knew the situation stopped seeing him there, so I think he may have gotten fired or moved on from that store. Either way, I haven't had any issues since, but I've never in my life felt so afraid of another human being as I did that day, seeing him make eye contact with me in the parking lot as I frantically locked my car doors. It still creeps me out to think he was watching me so closely every time I entered the store that he could so easily avoid or follow me whenever he wanted. Hi everyone. I want to start off by saying that I posted this a while ago, but it was on a different account and one I've since deleted. A lot of different stuff has happened with this person since the first time I told it on here. I tried to find it, but I couldn't, so I'm posting it again, because I'm currently scared and angry over this situation. Anyway, let's get started. When I was a freshman in college, in October of 2018, a guy I'll call Ron Jones stalked me. I met Ron through one of our mutual friends, Chris, because they were in a school club together. When I met Ron, I thought he was kind of strange, but he was nice and seemed interesting. He claimed to be Slavic and had an accent to back that up. I just thought that he might seem weird because of cultural differences. I go to school in a rural southern area, and I figured the culture shock between here and wherever he was originally from was just a lot to handle. Anyway, we exchanged numbers and texted fairly infrequently for a couple of weeks. On October 3rd of 2018, a friend of mine and I went to a drag show on our campus. We weren't out super late, but it was dark when the show ended, and we began to walk back to our dorm. I'd been texting Ron a bit during the night because he was unable to get a ticket to the drag show and he wanted to know how it was. At some point during the conversation, I mentioned that I wanted to grab some orange juice on the way back to my dorm. Don't know why I mentioned that to him. I think I was just making conversation. My friend and I stopped in the convenience store near our building so I could get said orange juice, and when we did, Ron was already there. He said something about buying it for me. I thanked him but declined. After that, he got kind of mad and started to walk away, which was a bit odd to me, but I decided to let it go. My friend and I walked out of the store and saw that he was standing outside still. Our dorm was actually right across from the building the convenience store was in, so he saw us enter the building. My friend and I parted ways, and I walked up to my room, which was on the second floor of the building, facing towards the convenience store. I kick myself for doing this now, but I walked to my window, opened it, and yelled down to Ron when I saw that he was still just standing there. I apologized for declining his offer to buy the juice for me, because I felt like I had been a little rude. Guilty conscience, I guess. He stood below my window and started talking to me about random things, and at one point he said something that was a bit odd. "Hey, can I flirt with you? I enjoy doing that." I just laughed and said, okay. I had no clue how to respond to that, and I figured maybe he was just a flirtatious person. Stupid, I know, but that's not the dumbest thing I did. I ended up going outside to sit and talk with Ron for a little bit because I felt bad for being rude earlier, as if declining someone's offer to buy you something is rude. While we were outside, he didn't say anything of note, and he was acting pretty normal. It got cold out, so he asked if we could go inside to talk, and I said sure. At this point in the year, I'd had several guy friends go over to my room just to work and chat, so I didn't see any real issue with it. Things started out normally, but they very quickly got scary. Out of nowhere, as soon as we were alone in my room, Ron transformed into a completely different person. He stopped blinking, he held eye contact very intensely, and he was laughing in this really low, creepy way. On top of that, his Slavic accent just disappeared. That's when he admitted to me that he had lied about being Slavic, and that he was native to the state our college is in. He started to get increasingly more creepy, and there was nothing I could do about it, because I had a single room of my freshman year. At one point he grabbed me in a hug, and wouldn't let go of me until I demanded 3 times in a row. He told me he'd done a lot of very bad things, and that if I wanted to put him in jail he could give me the names of people who had evidence against him. He even admitted that he hates Jews and black people, and everyone, until they gave him a reason not to hate them. He just started admitting a lot of weird, nearly sexual stuff to me as well. He went on and on about how showering alone isn't fun, and it's better with another person, and that he'd be willing to do that if I wanted to. Keep in mind this guy had a girlfriend, and he acknowledged that as well. He even said he'd go after me if he weren't dating someone, which freaked me out. He asked if he could sleep in my room, and of course I said no. I used that to tell him I was ready for bed, and that he needed to leave right away. As he left though, he turned to me and said, "Hey, do you want to know how insecure the locks on your door really are?" He pulled out a few IDs from his wallet, all with different names. I closed the door on him and looked through the peephole. He stood there, observing the door for an uncomfortably long time before finally leaving. After that, he called me multiple times throughout the month, always at the strangest times. He started to appear everywhere I was around campus. The friend who had initially introduced us, Chris, actually started walking everywhere with me because he'd noticed Ron was starting to follow me around and was lurking around corners where I couldn't see him. Apparently, he was around me a lot more than I realized because Chris began carrying a knife whenever we went anywhere together. Ron was everywhere, and he would come up to me and just put his arm around me, whisper things like, "We need to talk," whenever he saw me. For a while, he would lurk outside my dorm, but then all of a sudden that just stopped one day. I later found out that Chris had had enough and just told my RA about Ron and that he'd been banned from my building. I hadn't done that myself because I thought I was overreacting. I wasn't. I blocked him on my phone and he hasn't contacted me since. He did apologize to me one day on campus last semester when we ran into each other. I was actually willing to just accept it and move on. Until recently. So here I am 2 years later, and everything that happened with Ron has come back up again. I found out very recently that he has a history of stalking women, like an extensive history, going back at least 5 years. I even met another victim of his, who he'd stalked before coming to my university. She had gone to community college for a bit, and he stalked her while he was also a student there. He followed her to our university after apparently being suspended from the school after 3 separate stalking incidents were linked to him. The victim I met told me something quite worrying. Ron is currently an RA on our campus, and she was one of his residents. When she told the residential office that Ron had stalked her in the past, they told her all they could do was have her move dorms, which of course she did. They then said they couldn't do anything to discipline him because the stalking hadn't occurred at our university. She and I both reported our experiences with him to the residential office, who then tipped off the campus police, who then spoke to the dean of students. The thing is, though, when I gave his name to the residential office, they had no idea who I was talking about. He'd given me a fake first and last name, and I had to do a lot of searching to find out who he really was. I mean, I knew he was sketchy when I saw the 4 separate IDs in his wallet, but I didn't think he'd given me a fake name when I'd first met him. After talking to residential living, I talked to the police. When I talked to the police, they didn't seem to care about what I had to say. Actually, the officer I spoke to talked over me while I was explaining the times he followed me and said he'd heard all he needed to hear. I spoke to the dean of students, who asked me some clarifying questions about the police report he'd received. The police had mixed up several details of my story with the stories of other victims. Apparently more people than just myself and the girl I met have come forward with information about this person. There are even reports he'd gotten physical with at least 2 separate people before coming to this university. Last week I saw him on campus. He's still an RA, even though multiple women have spoken to higher-ups about his behavior. If I hear from him, I'm issuing a no-contact order to ensure he stays away from me. Right now, though, that feels like too much of a hassle, because we're all going home for a 2-month break due to COVID education anyway. That's kind of it. It's anticlimactic, and there's no sense of justice in any of it, but hopefully this story teaches you all to stay on your toes and not think you're overreacting when someone is being sketchy. To start off, let me say that I had a rather sheltered childhood. My dad was in the military, so my family lived on an army base, which is sort of like an ultra-gated community. Anyone coming in through the gates had to show ID, and it was pretty much insulated from the rest of the city that surrounded it. Because of this, I had quite a lot of freedom to explore and spend time outside unsupervised. That's why I find it especially strange that I had this encounter on a summer day in my pre-adolescence, about 12 years ago. On the base that I lived in, there was a public pool where we would go most days during the summer. It was pretty large, and its main attraction were the 3 different slides it had. I had just passed the swim test that was required in order to ride the largest one, so I was quite eager to go to the pool that day. Our family friends lived just down the street, and they had several children as well, and 2 of the girls were close to my age, and they had an older brother who was going to drive us all to the pool for that day. They literally lived about 9 houses down the road, so I donned my one-piece bathing suit and flip-flops, wrapped a towel around my waist, and grabbed my pool bag under my arm so I could head over and start the day. One important detail is that I wore glasses at the time. I got them when I was around 9. My vision wasn't exactly too terrible back then, though it's gotten a lot worse in the years since. I was too young to have contacts at the time, so I would just leave my glasses at home so that I wouldn't lose them in the pool. This had actually happened to me more than once before. I began the walk to my friend's house. As I walked along the sidewalk, the row of houses was on my right, the street was to my left, and there was a parade field on the other side of the road. Since this was a main road, nobody was allowed to park on the street in front of the houses, and everyone would instead park on the service road behind them. This is why I noticed that a car passed me and parked right in front of my friend's house. I figured my friend's brother must have invited someone to the pool with us. I noticed someone step out of the car, and to my surprise, they didn't walk towards my friend's house. Instead, they walked directly up the sidewalk, right towards me. As the person drew a bit closer, I could see that it was a man. That's really all I could see. Seemed to be an average height, somewhat skinny dude. Again, I kept thinking that it was my neighbor's friend, and he was going to ask me if he had the right house or something. As he finally approached me, all I remember being able to see about him was that he was relatively young and had this brown hair. "Hey," he said, "are you, going to the pool?" I remember kind of thinking, duh, since I was wearing my swimsuit and a towel, but I replied very politely. "Oh, cool, is it that big one with the big curly slide?" he asked. I replied that it was. There was another pool on the base that was smaller and had no slides, so I figured he was just trying to determine which one I was going to. "Oh, really? I'm going there too. I can, give you a ride if you want." His tone was friendly enough, but I instantly felt adrenaline surge through my body. I may have been sheltered, but this was the exact kind of scenario I had seen in countless movies and PSAs, and I instantly felt panicked. Some stranger asking me to get in their car with them was not something I was dumb enough to accept. No thanks," I answered him. I remember straining to look at him, to see some defining characteristic I could tell my mom about later, but I was not about to get closer to him to get a better look. All I could make out was that brown hair. "Okay, well, would you be able to give me some directions there then? If you come to my car, I have a map and you can show me the way," he said nonchalantly. My panic instantly rose when he mentioned coming to his car. It also struck me as strange that he apparently knew the exact pool I was talking about and offered to drive me there, but suddenly claimed he didn't know where it was. All I could think about was getting away from him, so I stammered out, "No, I'm good. I'm riding with my friends, so I'll just go with them." He calmly acknowledged this and just walked back to his car. I had to walk the same direction as him, but I cut diagonally through all my neighbor's yards so that I wouldn't risk walking near his car. As he reached it and hopped inside, he did not drive away. I remember wishing so badly that I could see the license plate, but it was too far away for my eyes to make out. As I walked to my friend's door, I knocked frantically and kept looking behind me to see that the car was still there. They answered in only about 30 seconds, and as soon as they opened the door, he sped off. My friend's mom was the one who answered, and she could tell immediately that something was wrong. I told her what had just happened, and I think they ended up calling the local cops, but nothing ever came of it. And to this day, this entire encounter really confuses me. The guy didn't seem to be threatening, and when I told people that he seemed to be young, in his early 20s maybe, everyone just kind of brushed it off. But I just can't imagine anyone having good reasons for inviting an unknown 11-year-old girl into their car. Either your intentions are bad, or you're just incredibly stupid. I guess I'll never know what was up with that guy, but I'll happily never meet him again. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any criticisms on how I can make the videos better, or any thoughts about it in general, please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. As well, in the description below the video, there will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, Twitter, and Twitch accounts. If you guys want to chat, please be sure to send me a message on any of those. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be forewarned though that I tend to go on Facebook less than the others, so it may take me a little bit longer to respond to you. If you want to send in a story, or you have a story that you'd like to be read, please be sure to take a look at the description and send me a message on any one of those sites. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one as well, and how you would like to be credited in the video the story appears in, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. And please be sure to include as much detail as you are comfortable with, and make sure to follow proper grammar at least a little bit. That way it will be easier for me to read, and it will also be long enough to put into a video. If you guys are curious about the music used in the video, it's always listed in the description in the order which it appears, and I have links to the artists as well. I usually use Doblato Studios and Miyuji, so that's usually what you're going to find there. If you're curious about the art in the video, my art guy Alan always does all of my art for the channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I have links to all of his social media as well, so if you like his stuff, be sure to check him out. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure, so if you like it, you can definitely get some good quality products from him. I don't think there's too much new updates today, other than the fact that I'm very excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out, and I just ordered Pikmin 3 on the Switch, so hopefully that gets here soon. I've been waiting like 3 years for that because nobody bought a Wii U. So yeah, that's my news for now. Be sure to let me know how you guys are doing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.